Hey guys, welcome back. So today we want to talk about people taking a look at perhaps their first defensive carbine or defensive rifle. And a lot of folks will take a look at all the cool stuff that's out there on the market and perhaps go home with the wrong thing. So we just want to share our views on this. And this is coming from a gun shop employee type of perspective and trying to help a new customer. But before we get started with today's video, folks, if you haven't heard of Paul Harrell, he's a legend here on GunTube, and Paul has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And Paul posted just recently in one of his most recent videos, he's in hospice, but the community as a whole, and Paul did not ask the community to do this. This is being done purely on behalf of the community, but we're asking you guys to swing by, and I'll put a link down below, and pick up one of these shirts in support of Paul. All profits, 100% of the profits, are going to go to Paul and his wife to help them in this absolutely horrible time. Also, I want to thank everybody in the community that posted to get Paul up over 1 million subscribers. I also want to thank Donut Operator because he reached out to our YouTube rep to try to expedite his golden play button. So it's amazing to see the 2A community come together in a time like this. So please, if you have the resources and the availability and the capability, pick up a t-shirt and help support Paul and his family, and his brother's going to carry on with the channel. So with that being said, let's get started talking about rifles like this, rifles similar to this, the AR-15. And if you're out there really looking for your first self-defense type carbine, what should you be looking at? What things should you consider? Let's get started. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. So we made a video previously talking about how the Masada, which was originally Magpul's rifle, which they sold to Bushmaster, that became the ACR, how that rifle really heavily influenced small arms designs going forward. Magpul really knocked that concept out of the park. The two rifles you see here before you are rifles that I would say were inspired by the Masada, or the ACR. Here we have a Bren 2, and this is a Czech military rifle. And here is the new Carmel from IWI. This is a rifle that they build for export to military markets. This one's built right here in the United States. As a matter of fact, IWI US played a major role in finishing the development of this gun and bringing it to the US market. But these rifles, while they represent the latest and greatest in technology, heavy use of polymers, modular designs, all that stuff, between these two rifles, there are no parts compatibility outside of the magazine and the ammunition that they fire. So trigger components, bolts, carriers, barrels, butt stocks, all that stuff are proprietary to each of the guns. Now, these are just two examples. There's plenty more out there. You have the Beretta ARX, 160 and or 100, and you have just tons of different rifles that have come out over the years that make heavy use of polymers and kind of follow along that ACR style of design. Now, each of these rifles has things about it that I absolutely love. But there are also things about it that can be problematic for those of you that are looking for that first rifle, or you're still kind of early on in the game of collecting firearms and using them for self-defense. The rifles that you see here are very expensive. Okay, so you're getting up into the $2,000 price range, which makes it substantially more expensive than an alternative, which we'll get into here in a moment. Probably your best choice if you're looking for a modern defensive rifle here in the United States. Now, if you're watching this video somewhere else in the world, this really doesn't apply to you. This is really an American type of topic today. So the Carmel, what a neat gun. This is a gun that came out just recently, hit the market. It's very thick. I think it looks good. It's a bit heavy. And the original design had originally a polymer shorter handguard on it and stuff, but they decided to go with the M-LOK aluminum for, compatibility with all the, stuff that you'd want to strap onto a gun. If you want to put a pack on there, vertical foreign grip, a light, whatnot. That's why they decided to go with the M-LOK. So the gun's a little bit heavy. It's a little bit thick, but it's a definite just peach to shoot. I just love shooting the thing. Very, very cool rifle. Now, going back before the Carmel, the Bren 2 was a rifle that I fell madly in love with. And when I learned that we had the Bren 805, and then that had some shortcomings. It's more or less kind of an ACR/SCAR type of hybrid, if you will. And that's another funny thing to point out. People will take a look at these rifles and they'll go, well, that looks like this rifle had a baby with that rifle, and that's how you got that. And you'll see that with new handguns, new rifles, people saying, well, that's just a marriage between this and this. And I keep telling people, can you think of a new color, a new smell, a new anything? Well, no. Everything that we experience in life, for the most part, for the average person, except for those geniuses out there, we just take bits and pieces of things that already exist, and then we mold that into something new. Take the Glock, for example. The Glock wasn't the first polymer frame striker fire double stack handgun that ever hit the US market. It became the most popular, but HK did it years before. But they just took bits and pieces of different designs, made the Glock, and the Glock became, you know, the new drip, if you will, in the current vernacular. So that's how these things work. So the Bren 2 was a rifle that I was really excited about. Loved the 805, had quite a few shortcomings. We documented that in a full video. The Bren 2 came out, very, very cool rifle, and a great gun. It had some teething issues, especially with the 7.62 by 39 variants. This is a 5.56, but that gets into another area when you're considering picking up a new rifle and something that you might be using for self-defense. Both of these rifles aren't even a decade old, okay? So that means that when they first come to market, they may have teething issues. This one's had a recall already. This one has had serious problems with the 7.62 by 39 version of it. And I know there's been updates to the gun, but anytime you adopt something new like this, you're not only going to pay a whole bunch of money for it, thousands of dollars, because these guns are expensive, not because they're marking it up and making 2,000% profit just to screw the little guy. They have years of R&D in these things and millions of dollars invested in them. So they got to sell an awful lot of them, even at $2,000, just to recoup the costs of designing, developing it, tooling up, buying millions and millions of dollars worth of machines to make the thing before that price could even start to come down, like the AR-15, right? Today you can find AR-15s for $500. 20 years ago, they were expensive. I mean, they may have still been $500, $600, but 20 years ago, that would be the equivalent of $1,500 today. So there's a lot of things that people, when they look at these, they look flashy, they look cool, they look super modern. I love the appearances. I love the Bren 2. I really enjoy shooting the Carmel. But is it really your best choice, right? In my opinion, rifles like these are better suited for folks that are collectors like myself. You already have several other firearms you use for self-defense or personal defense. You're already into the hobby, and therefore you're looking for something different, something to enjoy, something to have fun with. I'm not saying these wouldn't make good defensive firearms. Clearly they would, but for the average gun buyer, the typical gun buyer, these probably aren't your best choices, even if you're an experienced gun buyer. My own personal preferences for defensive rifles fall outside of these. I wouldn't choose either one of these or guns like them, and there's a reason for that. And let's get into some of those reasons, but let's take a look first at the rifle that probably makes the most sense. I'm sure this is going to come as an extreme shock and surprise to you guys, but the rifle that's probably your best choice is a good old American AR-15. Now, the manufacturing of the AR-15, when I was younger, man, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s, AR-15s weren't all that common. Matter of fact, if you showed up at a public firing range with an AR-15, what we call FUDs today would look at you sideways, and then they would impose stupid rules like, you can't shoot that thing any faster than, you know, one round every 30 seconds. And there's some ranges that are still like that. But, you know, the rifle since that time, if you take a look at a chart, the production of them has just skyrocketed. This is America's rifle. There are tens of millions of these things in circulation. You go to any gun store in America, except in those states that aren't free anymore, and you're going to find an AR-15 on the wall. Chances are, friends of yours, even if you don't think they're gun people, probably have an AR-15 somewhere, or maybe even shot one. So the AR-15 is America's rifle. And so why would this make a better choice? Well, first of all, folks, the fact that this gun is literally made by countless different companies. Not only do companies manufacture the entire firearm, but then you have thousands more companies making parts for them. Bolts, carriers, triggers, stocks, barrels, sights, whatever. There is almost a 0% chance, outside of federal government doing stupid bans and, you know, calling out the military on the US population, there's almost zero chance this gun would go away and you would never be able to find parts for it because they're just so obscure and there just weren't enough of them to resupply you to fix whatever broken parts you had some years down the road. If 10 AR-15 manufacturers went out of business, it still isn't going to change how many are produced every year, how many people are buying the darn things. It's just the standard in the United States. Now, you can pick up rifles very affordably from companies like Palmetto State Armory, where you can pick up a rifle for $499. Or you can pick up a Noveske, a Knights, a Colt, an FN, a BCM. There are just so many choices out there to fit the budget you're looking for. And so the AR-15 by far is your best choice for a defensive rifle, a rifle even just for fun. It's just almost impossible to beat. The problem with guns like this, if you remember when we opened up the video, we started talking about the ACR. I love the ACR, I have a couple of them. And the ACR remained in production for a while. Magpul never produced it. They sold the rights to Bushmaster. Bushmaster then sold itself to Remington. Remington continued on. They tried to modify it and get a military contract. They failed. They went out of business. ACR is gone. Now, I believe Franklin Armory has the rights to the design, but they've made no announcements that I'm aware of saying the thing's coming back to the market. So if you had chosen the ACR, which is a rifle that I absolutely love, you go back over 10 years into our old videos, you're going to see me doing a comparison between the SCAR 16 and the ACR, and I like the ACR better in that series of videos. But had I chosen that ACR as my go-to rifle, today I would be scrounging for parts and accessories that would work with it because it's no longer in production. You're never going to have to worry about this, knock on wood, with an AR-15 of any type. The AR-15, because it is a semi-automatic version of our actual military service rifle, parts compatibility is guaranteed unless you go with some really Gucci type of firearm, right? A standard AR-15 manufactured by any number of companies, the parts are going to interchange just fine. This does not translate to the AR-10. We were just having that conversation this morning. AR-10s don't have such a standard. AR-15 does. So if you buy mil-spec or mil-spec compatible, you're going to be able to find thousands of different parts and accessories and replacement bits and pieces you might break over the years. Now, I've also heard a rather funny comment over the years for the survivalist community. They'll say, well, I choose the AR-15 because if, Civil War breaks out, I can just pick up parts off a dead soldier and take the parts out of their rifle and put them in mine. Why wouldn't you just pick up the rifle? If your rifle's broken and there's a perfectly fine rifle laying on the ground and you want the machine gun capability for some reason, just pick up the rifle and take it. Why would you pull the parts out? Anyway, but it does go to the point that the AR-15 is very common. If we did find ourselves in a shiznit hits the fan type situation, so many people have parts and accessories for this thing that you could easily barter for parts to repair your rifle if it were to break. Or if you're wise, you'll just have a bunch of spare parts already, which I do advise doing if you pick an AR-15 or any rifle for your go-to gun, even if it were an ACR. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the point of today's video, folks, because we have folks come into Copper Custom all the time, and they're first-time buyers, or maybe they're looking for their second rifle, and they walk right over the wall. We carry all sorts of firearms. We have Aces, we have Carmels, we have ARs, we have Bullpups, X95s, all this stuff. And people come in, they gravitate towards those really flashy looking modern rifles that are super expensive. But our staff will say, here are some things you need to consider. Is this your first rifle? This going into a collection? How do you plan on using it? So we can try to help steer them to make a purchase so they don't wind up spending a bunch of money on something ultimately that they'll wind up trading in for a loss later to get something that actually works for them. So I look forward to your comments down below, folks. What do you think about this? What would you recommend? Would it be something other than the AR-15? Some of you might even go with the AK, but the reason I would say not the AK these days, maybe 10 years ago, I'd say it was a viable option, but an AK in any of the by 39, 7.62, or 5.45, that ammunition's dried up and has become as expensive as 5.56. So while the AK is still a viable rifle, it's not the deal it used to be. That, and there's been a flip in the market. AKs are now $1,000 even for the PSA AKs, and you can get an AR-15 from the same company for $500. So the market's flipped. The ammunition's become more expensive, and the rifles have now passed the AR-15 in terms of cost. So what would you recommend? Comment down below. And many times we take a look at those comments and it gives us ideas for future videos. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. Please, again, swing by and check out the Paul Harrell t-shirt website. That link will be down below. Also right here on YouTube, you have a little join button and thanks button underneath the video player you're watching right now. You can mash either one of those buttons and help support us here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Last but not least, please swing by and check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 16 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.